Hello, everybody. So, thank you for spending part of your Sunday night with me. This live stream is going out to five, I think, different social media platforms. So, if you see me on one and I don't catch if you have a comment and I don't see it, I do apologize. The only comments through this system I get reliably are the ones that are left on YouTube. So if you want to comment, please jump over to the YouTube. My username there is just Timothy M. Holt, and it's pretty easy to find. So no matter where you're seeing me, welcome. But if you comment any place besides YouTube, I may not see it. So tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit about being an indie writer and what that means as far as how do you actually get to the point where your book is being read by people and being read continuously or by more people or seen or sells to more people than your immediate friends and family. As an indie writer and an indie creator, that is a struggle. That is a huge struggle that I faced early on. I've been at this for about 10 years. I've sold lots of copies now. I've even in the point where I'm beating some traditionally published authors as far as copies in circulation, but it's taken a decade for me to figure this whole thing out. So I don't normally go to a lot of author events. I normally just interact with people online. So the last couple of months, I've been going to all the local author events. I've been reaching out to indie writers and saying, look, what's your number one complaint? What's the number one thing that you wish somebody had told you? Or what's the X factor in between you and being successful? And there were some common themes. So some people may not like everything I'm going to say, but these were the common themes that people gave back to me. And we're going to try to go through them one by one and just say, look, this might be what you think is the problem. It may not be, but don't get in your own way. So if you hear some of the things that you actually think to yourself and say, well, I'm not being successful because, just get that out of your head. Okay. So some of the common themes I heard from probably 100 writers I talked to, and I think I bought 80 indie books over the last 2 months at different events. I haven't read them all yet. I've read probably 10 or 12 of them, but I'm working on it. But some of the common themes I heard were, well, I work in action thriller and people aren't ready for an LGBTQ writer. I am a woman and I work in sci-fi and people aren't ready for that. I have purple hair and unless I'm writing, horror or something, people don't want to see that. I'm trying to write an area I have no experience, and how do I, convince people to read my stuff when I have no experience? And my favorite complaint that I heard more often than any other by far was the algorithm hates me. We've all heard it. Okay. Now let's go through these sort of one at a time and see what we can do to overcome them. First, let's see whether or not some of them actually are a problem, and then we'll get to how to overcome them. So let's take a quick look. People aren't ready for a woman. People aren't ready for a person of certain sexuality, whatever. So this is the New York Times hardcover fiction bestseller list. People aren't ready for a woman. The number one is a woman, been there for 27 weeks. Number two, guess what? New this week. Number three is Brad Thor, been around a long time. Number four, Rebecca, on there for 66 weeks. She's been there for a very long time. But that's the general fiction list, right? So what about sci-fi? Sci-fi. I went through and looked. This guy has green hair, so we can't take the hair for a problem. We've got a woman, another woman. There's not really a thing anymore that says, hey, look, women can't be successful in certain fields. They're all over the place, right? So if you want to trip up and say, oh, look, they're not ready for somebody with purple hair, green hair, LGBTQ, whatever. That's not necessarily the case as much as it once was. Oh, I don't have any experience writing in the area I'm trying to write in. This is David Morrell. He wrote First Blood and dozens of other action thriller books that are fantastic. I'm an Army veteran, and when I read them, I'm like, this guy really, at least did his research to the point where he sounded like he knew what he was talking about. He has an MA and a PhD in American literature. He's been a professor of literature forever. And he wrote some of the best action thrillers you ever want to see. First Blood became the Sylvester Stallone movie of the same name and launched the whole Rambo franchise. So he had no experience in the military whatsoever, And here he is, he launched the Rambo franchise. He worked on Captain America. He's done all this other stuff. And what he did was he researched his topic to the point where he understood it. And that's important as a fiction writer. If you're going to write about something, research as you understand it. I know somebody's going to say, yeah, but people are going to leave negative comments. Let them. That's fine. Not everybody's going to like your writing. Somebody's going to come along and hate it at some point. One of my books, The Last World War, I have a PhD in experimental physics. I've worked in nuclear physics. My co-author on that book is a former combat medic. We had one person who left a review that said, well, these people clearly don't understand nuclear physics or combat injuries. And we were like, yeah, okay. Tom Clancy never set foot on exactly right, Mark. I think I can show that. Yeah, Tom Clancy never set foot on until after the movie came out, right? So, yeah, Tom Clancy researched that crap out of stuff before he wrote. And that's how he got to where he was. So let's see. Now, what's the big problem with selling books? Well, part of it is I think some people also, I heard a common theme of, well, I don't want to give in to Amazon. I don't want to be on Amazon. I want to be in other bookstores. Well, here's part of the problem. If you ignore Amazon, 60% of the books sold in the United States were sold on Amazon. 60%. 40% is everybody else. Okay. And that 40% includes college bookstores, includes indie, includes Barnes and Noble, includes Books A Million, includes all that. Amazon is 60%. Okay. 60. That's a big, big number. And we're actually going to look at the back end of some of my books, and I'll show you some other things that might be concerning to you after a bit here. So remember that. You can't ignore Amazon. They are the heart and soul of the book industry. We may not like it that way. That's just general the way the stuff works. Now, let's look at the book industry in general. How many books are actually sold? Well, if you look at adult fiction versus children's fiction versus young adult, in 2022's the most recent numbers I could find, you're talking 189 million books. That number has actually been rising. It's kind of wiggled around a little bit, but it's been rising. It rose 2021, 2022. Those were COVID years. Okay. I'm seeing some numbers that I haven't been able to believe yet that say it's coming down a little bit. I would buy off on that. Every couple of years, there's a study done by one of the federal groups. I think it's done by the National Endowment of Arts that says how many adults over a certain age, I think it's over 18, read a book in the last year. And read a fiction book in the last year. And the number was like something like 20% read one, and it got really bad if you went above one. It was like 10 or 12%. So avid readers read, but non-avid readers don't tend to. And here's the other problem with these numbers. So you see these numbers here that look pretty big. Well, 189 million. I'd love to have 1% of that, right? Well, that includes Stephen King. That includes, the guy who's now writing for Tom Clancy, the guy who's now writing for Robert Ludlum. That includes a lot of big names. The other thing that includes is all the backlist, right? So lots of times throughout the year, people will buy from the backlist. They'll buy another copy of Lord of the Rings. They'll buy another copy of whatever it is. But a lot of backlist sales go on. So if you're a new author trying to break in, you've got to compete with backlist, big names, everybody else. So you've got to really look at where am I actually going to find those sales, or where am I actually going to find an audience? And sometimes you have to kind of go into different into different genres to try to find that audience. Now, where is the audience? Well, let's break apart fiction here for a second. 23% of the books sold that are fiction books are actually in the romance category. So women, it turns out, tend to be the large purchaser there. And they very avid readers. People who read those are very avid about it. So 23% of the fiction books sold in the United States are sold to women. Mystery thriller counts for about 19. Science fiction counts for 15. Now, science fiction writers are the ones I heard the most complaints about sales. And I will tell you that sci-fi has such a massive backlist of just hugely prolific authors. I see a lot of people reading that backlist. And then there's sort of right now David Weber and everybody else, right? So if you're in the sci-fi section, it's tough to break in. I don't care who you are. I've actually written a sci-fi, and it's my worst selling book ever. And I have a PhD in physics. It was easy for me to write because I understand this stuff. But there's just no audience there. It's the worst selling book I've had. And I'll show you I'll show you actually the back end of mine so we can actually look at some of that together on how that works in a few minutes. Young adult, I see a lot of people like, oh, I'm going to only write young adult. Well, that's 11% of book sales. So you're actually giving up 89% of the audience if you're sticking in young adult. Horror, a lot of people love to write horror, but only 6% of people actually like to read them. Historic fiction, which by the way, I've written one of those too. Really hard to write. Those take a ton of research and a ton of fact checking, ton of time. Very rewarding. I like reading them. Really hard to do. Paranormal romance is down. This is things like Twilight and other stuff. It's down to about 1%. That used to be a much bigger number. Young adult fiction is going up, but those are the numbers. Now let's go look at my numbers just to show you a couple of things. So this is one of my books called Forest of Assassins. This was actually one of the first books I wrote. It was published in 2013. We started putting it on there in 2012, but in 2013 didn't do very well because it was kind of new. The other thing to remember as you go through your publishing journey is it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's like any kind of career choice. It is not a sprint to the finish, right? I like my PhD is in physics, right? I've been at it for 20 years. I'm much better and much more respected now than I was even when I was sitting in an office at MIT. And I don't work at MIT anymore. Right? So, but I'm just, I'm much more experienced now. So anything is a marathon. You get better at it over time. And that's just the way life works. But if you look at this one, this was my first book, 10,000 copies sold. But I see a lot of people also saying, well, I don't want to be in digital. I want print only. People should read on Dead Tree, right? Well, look at this. Look at these sales numbers. 315 print copies, 10,396 paid, not free, paid digital copies sold. Where's the audience? Nobody's reading print anymore. People are becoming, it takes a decade to become an overnight success. My son's godfather, actually, as a cute aside, my son's godfather, one of my son's godfathers, was an electrical engineer who founded a company called Compaq, and he said it was amazing that 7 years after he started the company, it was called an overnight success. But anyway, I digress. But the point is, do not ignore the digital. Just don't ignore it. That's where everybody is, and make your digital a reasonable price. Especially if you're on Kindle, below $2.99, you get a 35%. Royalty. Above that, you get 70%, I think. So $2.99 and up is really where you're going to make some money. But so you try to keep it in that range. Don't try to make it like $10.99 or $11.99 or whatever. It's not going to sell very well. People are going to look for these lower price points, and you sell a lot more copies. So there's a little balancing act you have to play. Now, another way, especially if you're new, there's a program if you're on Kindle and you're willing to say, yes, I'm going to be exclusive to digital on Kindle, which is kind of annoying. But the Kindle, it has this thing called Kindle Unlimited, to which people pay a $9.95 a month subscription fee, and they can read as many books as they want, as long as it's marked as under Kindle Unlimited. Now, how you get paid off of that is they pay you, I think it's 0.0, just like half a penny a page. I think it's 0.45 pennies a page or something. So the more pages people read, the more you get paid. But it's also a way for people to find you. And remember, readers talk to readers. So if people find you under Kindle Unlimited and they like you, they're going to go run off and tell their friends about it, right? So Forest of Assassins here, I think last time I looked at it, like 1,000 reviews on Amazon, a little over that, like a 4.2 star average. So word of mouth works. But Kindle Unlimited, 1.4 million pages read under that program. So a lot of people have found that book under that program, right? And Mark, that's great. The Kindle Unlimited subscribers, they are avid readers, and they don't care if you're indie or not. Largely, they're just like, great, I'll read anything, right? As long as you catch their eye. Now, how do you catch their eye? Part of that is algorithm, and you got to put up with it. And we're going to get to a little bit more on that in a minute. But let's go look at my bookshelf and show you one of the places that it is vital when you set these things up, especially if you're indie, that you get this right. So it's going to take me a second because I actually have to find it. It is, oops, I went to the wrong spot. Let's go back here. Okay, let's go back to edit ebook details. I'm not actually going to change anything because I like the way this is set up, but you want to pay attention to your description, your summary. You want to pay attention to all that stuff. You also want to pay attention to these keywords. Okay, these keywords are vital. And notice I've left 3 blank. I should go back and put them in, because those keywords are how people are going to help what's it's going to use to have the algorithm. One more time, the algorithm is going to use that information to help people find your book. That is vital. If you don't get those keywords right, you're going to completely miss a lot of opportunities to have people see your book. Now, the next question is, where do you find readers, right? Is it just on Amazon? Is it just over here, just over there? Marketing is expensive. There's just no doubt around it. If you want to market across a large number of places, you have two choices. You can either spend a lot of money or you can have a reasonable social media presence. Readers tend to hang out on social media. They are there. That's where I connect with them. I don't run big, expensive ads. I use my social media presence to market, and that is the only place I market is on social media. And I don't even run paid ads on social media. I run just sort of normal stuff. So people are hiding in different places. Social media usage does change a little bit by age. You can see I broke it out here by age bracket on which platforms they're on. I would not recommend using LinkedIn to anybody trying to market a book. It's a much different system, but I broke these out for you anyway. Now let's go look in specifically at each platform. Now, the largest age group on Facebook is 25 to 34. All these slides came out of a presentation I did on how to monetize your different platforms. Don't worry about that. We're just looking at the demographics. So the gender distribution on Facebook is 43% female, 56% male. But look, they have 3 billion worldwide users, right? So that a lot of users are over there. Largest age group is 25 to 34. Instagram, 18 to 24, female, a little heavier male, really close to 50-50, but look, 2 billion users, right? A ton of people on Instagram. Threads, it's a new one. It's still growing. Not much is available on its user base. They do have about 190, 200 million users. Twitter, you have 368 million roughly active users. How many of those are bots? I don't know, but we'll see. Largest age group is 25 to 34, but this one is 63% male and 37% female. So it's heavy. It leans towards the male side more than anything else. TikTok, 1.7 billion users worldwide. You can see the age distribution. YouTube is a tough one to crack. I'm just personally getting into YouTube in the last couple of months, but it's been very successful for me in a lot of ways. 25 to 34 is the largest age group, but look, it's sort of 45, 54 male, female, but 2.4 billion users. That's a lot of users. Now, let's go think about for a minute. Great. That's all nice and good. We all know we need to do social media, but what the heck is, Mark brings up a good point. LinkedIn is a great place for nonfiction books, but I'm primarily focused on fiction. But you're exactly right. It's a fantastic place for nonfiction books, especially business-oriented books. If you've written something like that, it's a much better place for it. In fact, I've had people come to me over there because I used to work in traumatic brain injury when I was still on the university side. I worked on helmets to help prevent traumatic brain injury. I've had people come to me and actually pay me to do an editing pass on different nonfiction books for them that had to do with brain injuries. But so LinkedIn is a great place to sort of market your capabilities. And if you have nonfiction, it's a great place for that. You might pick up some writing stuff over there, but LinkedIn's a wonky thing right now. But if you want to have a good social media presence, yes, you can put your books up, and I put my books up on Twitter and Instagram and they're on YouTube and Threads, Facebook too. But if you want to do that, you can't just be about your books, right? Your timeline can't just be, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. You've got to do other things too. People want to know about you as much as they do about your story. Where did your story come from is important, but hey, who are you as a person? Like I've actually met some through Twitter, some very famous authors. In fact, David Morrell, I now have an autographed first edition copy of First Blood because we interacted on Twitter. But I learned a lot more about him in the fact that, he's actually in this cool Western watching club where he gets together a bunch of friends and watches Western movies on the weekends. So he posts some personal stuff out there, not too detailed, but he does post some personal stuff. David Baldacci, who I've actually met him as well. I was in the acknowledgments to one of his books. I was a subject matter expert on some nuclear stuff for him. He goes on social media and posts stuff when he's out on his boat sometimes. So he'll do things like, hey, I'm out fishing, whatever. So, people like that sort of stuff on social media. So then they get to know you. And then, if you actually do post something about your book, maybe they'll be a little more interested in it. It'll stand out. If you do nothing besides book, nobody cares, right? They're going to tune you out. Nobody's going to follow you, and they're never going to buy your book. The other thing I see a lot of indie authors do is, I'll see posts like, oh, gee, help me out and buy my book. Well, that's not a good thing to do, right? Put something about your book, put something about the story, put something that would get me to want to open it and go to the first page. Something else I will tell you that I did not believe when I was first doing this sort of thing. Cover art matters a lot more than you think it does. It is the first impression people get of your book. If you have questionable cover art, not many people are going to want to take a look at it. So cover art does matter. I found a good cover artist on Fiverr. I've had cover art done for anywhere from sort of $50 on up to about 400. I spent 400 on the last one because I wanted to, and I was able to. I know that's a little hard for some people, but you can spend that much. And another thing Mark brings up, bragging about your author pals. I've done that. I've done live streams with some independent authors. I've done events with indie authors. I've done other stuff. I love talking to people about their writing process, and I love doing it on my channel. I'll do it on anybody's channel. I don't care. And sort of what causes you to want to go read. Now, another thing about growing a social presence, especially if you're trying to say, oh, look, now, great, Tim, you showed us like those 6 social media platforms. We got all the demographics, but now I've got to go post on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Threads and YouTube. Well, there's a lot of tools that are out there that let you do that automatically. So you can actually go, Mark brings up a good point. Yeah, ebook launch, investment in the book covers was worth every penny, right? So there we go. It is. I had a book that was not selling very well. I went back and had the cover redone. I spent $100 on it, and next thing you know, it went from selling sort of 20 copies. Now it's up over 6,000. And the only difference was the cover. I didn't really change much else. Now, on your social presence, getting seen is always tough, right? Because you got all these billions of followers or billions of users, but how do you get seen above the noise? That's always a tough question. Well, there's a lot of tools out there because you don't want to have to go post 6, 7, 8 times a day. There's a lot of tools out there that will help you with that. I actually founded one as both an investor and the CTO. This thing called One for All Social. Use ours, use somebody else's. I really don't care, but I would advise using some kind of a social media tool to keep you organized that lets you post to multiple platforms at the same time, like this one does. And also ours, I do love reading books. So ours has this little hashtag tool that will automatically read your post for you and figure out the best hashtag. So like, look, it recognizes am reading is not in my post, but it's smart enough to know, hey, am reading is better for you to use. So what it's doing is saying, hey, look, that's in there. Let me go find the right hashtag. And in this case, the bigger that blue line, the more people actually viewing that post, not using it, the more people actually viewing that post. So, that's how I built this one out. I kind of built it for creators and authors. I wanted to keep it cheap. So it's actually $24.99 a month, whereas some of the others are like $200. So that one's actually pretty cheap by comparison. It's o4a.com if anybody wants to use it. It's actually running like 2 months for free right now too. So check it out. I hope this was helpful. And the one thing I wanted to get across to everybody was that, look, there's nothing standing between you and success. If you're an indie author, yes, you're a one-man shop, and yes, you've got to go do it all yourself, but there's nothing out there that can prevent you. Algorithms, you just have to learn to work with them. Yes, they can work against you if you're not familiar with them, but once you learn them, you can actually make that algorithm work for you. So, study them, Google them, use platforms like One for All or o4a.com. There's other platforms out there that give you advice on how the algorithms actually work and how to get around inside them. Make sure your keywords are set right. And the other thing I can tell you is, after all the indie books I've read, absolutely, positively, editing is hard. I understand, but it's very important. Especially the first couple of chapters. I'm much more forgiving on books in later chapters if you've got me hooked. But if your first couple of chapters aren't shockingly well edited, you're not going to do very well. So remember that. Hope this was helpful to everybody. If anybody out there is an indie author and you want to actually do a live stream on my channel, on your channel, or whatever, I'm happy to do it with you. So we can talk about your process, your books, your projects, whatever, what inspires you to write. Because I know a lot of people bring up questions about that for me. Like one night this was kind of funny. I hope the writers out there appreciate this. I got divorced a couple of years ago, right? So not a big deal. Don't worry about it. But I was out at a bar one night talking to this woman. I'm 52. I'm allowed to go to bars. It's okay. My kids were with my ex-wife. And I was having a great time talking to this one woman. And she called me the next day and goes, well, yeah, I can't really see myself going out with you. She was a youth pastor. And when you've written a book about a priest who turned into a serial killer, that doesn't really go very well. So remember, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight, but your process is important. Your stories are important. Why your books were personal to you is important. All that matters in your marketing material. Hey, if you want to come on and have a chat, I'm willing to do it with anybody. Live streams are easy and fast to set up. So let's bring it on. Hope everybody's sales get better. Hope this was helpful to people. But one bit of advice I can give you after 10 years is do not get in your own way and don't psych yourself out. You can do it. It just takes a lot of time and a whole lot of effort. And just writing the book is just the start. Marketing the book is every bit as hard. So everybody have a great night, and we'll see everybody soon.